the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Welcome back to the AV profession. I am your host, Taylor Ryan Moore, and with me today is another very special episode. Erin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. I am Erin Maher-Moran from Johns Hopkins University. I'm the IT manager for classroom technology on the Homewood campus, and I'm also the HETMA vice chair and the host of the EDTech podcast. Cannot forget about that.
We can't. We always got to promo each other's podcasts. That's why I said it's a special episode. It's another one of the podcast hosts joining on another podcast of our own. This is fun. It's merging the two worlds, as I like to say. So off the bat, I love a good icebreaker question. And as we are recording, it is Halloween. So I have to ask, in your holiday history, what has been your favorite costume you've ever dressed up as? Or what is your favorite costume you've seen someone dressed up as?
That's a tough one because I love Halloween and I always loved dressing up. And then once I had my son, I loved dressing him up. So I've done a lot of really cool costumes for him over the last few years. I've done Foxy the Pirate Fox from Five Nights at Freddy's. And it even had a glowing eye. Super cool.
Oh, that is very cool.
And I also did a paper mache head for a Fortnite character. It was the pink bear. Why is the name escaping me right now?
I wish I knew any of the characters' names from Fortnite. Otherwise, I'd help you. But I know what you're talking about. The bear, yeah.
So, and of course, it'll come to me right when I fall asleep tonight. But yeah, those are some of the most awesome things I did. Or Roblox mask I did. Ooh. That one was really cool too.
Now that'd be fun. Honestly, that seems pretty fun because they're all blocky and whatnot. So you gotta translate that to real life. Yeah. Ooh. I feel like in my long history of dressing up in costumes, I think there's two. I dressed up as Frankenstein this year for Halloween. So if you haven't seen it on my socials at __ Taylor Moore on Twitter, don't forget to follow. I dressed up as Frankenstein. And then my senior year of college, I dressed up as Arthur. Oh. So I had the sweater and then the ears and the shoes. And I was like, this is the best costume. It's very easy. I got this lion's mane, but it had the ears. So I cut off the main part and just had the ears. And I was like, this is the best costume I've ever worn. 10 out of 10.
I love it. That's adorable.
Oh, I wish we could stick on the spooky themes for our entire episode, but we got to talk about our other favorite loving activity, that is AV. And so as I try to ask everyone on our podcast sort of your origin stories before getting into AV, I want to ask you, before you got into this industry and stayed here for a while, what was your interest beforehand? Were you going to college and you were like, I'm going to do AV, is it going to be technology related? What's your pre-AV history?
So, yeah, my pre-AV history was essentially I was going to college for biomedical computing. And then, so as I needed a work-study job. And so I ended up getting my work-study job with the AV department because it wasn't food service. That was my one requirement. I was like, right. I need something. Don't want to do food service since I had...
That's very fair.
I'd been a bus girl for, a summer part-time job and no thanks. So the AV department was like, sure. You watch television, you can turn stuff on and off, right? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Sounds good. I think they essentially were like, we just want a girl to work with us since they really didn't have any in the department. So I was like, really? All right, this is cool. And eventually, through my college program, I realized I don't really like programming. So I changed my major to illustration, which complete and opposite end of the spectrum. But what stayed constant was my work study job. And so then after graduation, you start putting out your resume, and in my case, putting out my portfolio, and really wasn't finding anything full time. Got a couple freelance gigs, but the supervisor in my from my work study job, we had kept in touch, and she was like, "I'm moving on. They need somebody to fill in for me." So I was like, all right, I can do that for a little while I'm looking for something else.
Right.
And then, a little while turns into just apply for the job full time. So I'm like, all right, I can do this for a little while longer. And then I, I was like, you know what? This is it. I like doing this. I'm good at it. And then my good friend programming came back around, and I started going for my master's in IT. So I enjoyed doing that sort of programming a lot more with, between web design and early days of streaming. And so then I started taking control system programming classes, and I was like, this is it. I'm going to stick with it. And I hadn't really thought about why? What was it that, was so appealing until a few years ago when I was interviewing for someone to come work for me, and they asked me, like, why do you work here? Why, and then I was like, oh, I hadn't really thought about it. And I was like, this sort of stuff just, it kind of appeals to both sides of the brain. It can be very creative, but it can also be very analytical. It's, ones and zeros, especially now that things are very digital. So it's a 1 or a 0. It's on or it's off. But then there's kind of like audio has a very creative element to it, and controls programming, like that has a creative to it, especially if you have a little more flexibility with the user interface. And there's just so much going on with it that there could be something that just appeals to anybody in there. And that's kind of what I really, was like, yeah, this is it.
Yeah. Can you sort of touch on what that early job was like? Like, you got to your job, what was your day-to-day look like?
So when I first started, it was more of just like a technician. And most of the work was pushing carts. We didn't have as much stuff installed in classrooms at that time. And so a lot of things were bringing in slide projectors or even 16 millimeter projectors to show films. And, then so that was basically it. Just like keeping the schedule, making sure we're going to things. Sometimes there was like a tech on duty situation where I'd have to sit in the booth and, actually work through a class. But, for the most part, it was a lot of pushing around of carts. And then it sort of evolved into, we want to put stuff in classrooms because we're finding that this is now a trend. People want to use things on a consistent basis. This pushing carts around, that model is no longer working. We need to install.
Right.
And so then it became part of my responsibilities to help decide what should we put into rooms, and trying to be strategic about which rooms to put things in and what exactly is the need. And then it started to be how, it became, we need student staff to support some of this, to support this stuff.
Right.
And so the student staff started growing. And so, I started to supervise them. And then it sort of evolved into being, trying to, keep all the balance with everything of between stuff has to be brought in to support a class, stuff that's installed in there. And it was good.
Have you always been at Johns Hopkins University?
No. So I actually got my start. I did my undergrad studies at the Rochester Institute of Technology in Rochester, New York.
Okay.
Yes. The department was called ETC, the Educational Technology Center. And so it was like tucked away in the basement of the library, and it was paired up with the Media Resource Center. So when I came to Johns Hopkins, it was a bit of a different model to me, because I was used to being some under the library, whereas at Johns Hopkins, the classroom technology was out of the IT department, since they basically saw it that way because of the computers that were in a lot of the systems. So, and when I came to Hopkins, the job was essentially to support one building. It was one building full of general pool classrooms, and every room was a smart room, as they used to call them.
What does a smart room even mean?
It had the touch panel interface and a document camera, and some of them had telestrators in that really didn't work very well. But so that was the joy of the job, was just at the beginning of classes, I kind of had to run around and make sure that everybody was going, and we actually even carried pagers. We actually used pagers up until probably 2010.
Oh.
It was kind of one of those long past its prime. And even though it was like so low tech, it kind of just worked, because instructors could press a button on either of our control systems, because at the time we had like 2 different flavors, and they could just push a help button, and that would trigger a page to the technicians that were working, and then we just see where it came from and went running away. So it's been interesting to see the evolution of support. So we went from just pushing a button to now it's everybody has phones like on them. So now it's a phone call, and we can actually walk people through troubleshooting, as opposed to having to potentially make the trek across campus. Because when I started here in 2004, there was like 15 smart classrooms that were general pool, essentially, and then each year it grew a little bit and grew a little bit, until now we have 90 plus rooms, and that doesn't even include all of the departmental spaces that have installed technology in them that we tend to help out with, and all of the Zoom carts and all that stuff. So it's nice now that we can actually do a lot of remote administration on them and remote help to try to fix things without having to be like, okay, we'll be there in 5 minutes, or more, depending on what part of the campus we have to run to.
Right. Oh, I was curious because like it seems like you've seen a lot of technology evolution just throughout of all of like the classrooms and whatnot, and like even from when I was in college, and that was like not that long ago. I feel like all these classrooms are just so updated with technology. So what's been like the biggest shift in classroom technology? Like what's like some tools and solutions that you can think would be utilized in the classroom?
Yeah. It's funny because I don't know if it was an AV and AM or like an AV challenge or something. There was once a question that was posed to kind of the AV community in general. What would you say was like the biggest game changer? And I felt in higher ed, the biggest game changer was the LCD projector, because that really was what allowed us to put projection in a lot of spaces. The earlier, it was really the only big spaces had projectors installed in them, and they were like those big three gun CRT projectors that took forever to realign if it got bumped and so the LCD projector was really what kind of like made higher ed AV like what it is now. But I think there's so many things that just were tough to get rid of, like the overhead projector, the old transparency style, which every once in a while we still get a request for it. And they're like, you do realize that we can bring in a document camera and it'll do the same exact thing.
And they're like, no, I don't want that. Like, no, I want the translucent. I want that on the screen.
That old school, just sitting there writing away on their transparencies. And there were also the LCD panels that would go on top of an overhead projector that you'd connect a laptop to and project through the overhead onto the screen. And it was just low res, just real. You had to have a really bright projector or overhead for it to even work. And even then you were kind of like crossing your fingers, like, is this going to work today or not?
You're like, fingers crossed, hoping.
Yeah, that was one of the technologies that I was glad to see go away. Because at least then the LCD projectors came out and it was like, okay, they're way more dependable. Let's use those instead, because those panels that sat on top were just not great. And I think one of the biggest challenges has been or was getting rid of VGA. You would have thought that when the industry basically was like, there's the analog sunset, we are not putting these, we're not putting these connectors on our products anymore. That would have been that. And we'd be like, okay, this date came, we can start pulling the stuff out of classrooms. No, we were like, everybody HDMI, but that VGA just would always kept creeping up. And we're like, we need that. We still need that. I'm like, do you really? Do you?
So let's reconsider that.
It's time to get a new laptop if you still need it.
Well, I know you mentioned earlier that you are a part of HETMA. So for those of us who may not be familiar with what the organization is, can you sort of give like what the organization is and what specifically you do for the organization?
Yeah. So HETMA has become kind of my favorite, side project, essentially. It is the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance. It is essentially a nonprofit advocacy group for higher ed AV by higher ed AV. We strive to provide education opportunities and networking ops, and so that we can empower our membership to kind of grow our influence in the industry. And we have had a lot of members who, through their involvement with HETMA, kind of have the tools to improve their professional situation. So they've gotten promotions, where they work, or they've ended up going for, a higher level job at a different university. And it really seems to be paying off pretty well. And, we got, so my current role is as the vice chair. I had, when HETMA had their first elections for the board and chairs, I was elected the 2-year at-large member for the executive board. And then this past June at Infocom, I was then moved into the vice chair role, which was super exciting.
Super exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And so it's been great in that I can kind of, because it's a relatively new organization,
Right.
I've been fortunate enough that I can kind of really pick and choose sort of where I can help and where I can have the most impact. And so in the beginning, I was on every committee.
Right.
Everything that we were doing, I wanted to be part of. I wanted to help out with the conferences and the membership, and especially the DEI committee. That was when we were really starting to build up the PRISM Scholarship. And so now I've kind of tried to take a step back and be like, okay, a little, being part of everything is probably not beneficial to anybody. So I'm trying to concentrate a little bit more on the specific initiatives that, that could use, that really needs my attention more. So, of course, I was definitely the DEI initiatives of my, one of my, important favorite and important parts. But recently we announced a partnership with SAVE, which is sustainability in AV. And, it's become, I hadn't really thought about, what kind of role that AV plays in sustainability in general. And so it's been really eye-opening to kind of become partners with SAVE so that we can, higher ed really, especially, in higher ed in general, can really make an impact in sustainability efforts, just purely in education and kind of getting the word out. But, in AV, we have such a big opportunity to help because, making better decisions with what we do with our equipment and what we're putting in rooms, what we're taking out of rooms, and what's happening to that equipment. We can pay lip service to the that initiative and be like, oh yeah, we're e-cycling or we're doing this or that, but it's important to kind of just get the word out and that there are options out there. And one of SAVE's initiatives is Second Life. And so what they are trying to do is then work with organizations to collect AV equipment and find a second home for it, essentially, so that a lot of the equipment we take out of classrooms is still perfectly usable. But so it'd be nice to have a mechanism that we can let the equipment live longer and have another purpose and, save some space in the landfill.
Well, what has been one of the most rewarding parts since joining HETMA? What's you look back and you're like, I am most proud of this, or I'm happy that I was a part of this?
I mean, besides the PRISM Scholarship, I think that has been super rewarding. And currently, there are 9 recipients who have received this scholarship opportunity. And if dear listeners, if you haven't heard, the PRISM Scholarship is for higher ed AV people who are part of a diverse community or identify as being part of a diverse community, and that gives them an AVIXA Elite membership so that they can study and learn all of the things. And the end goal essentially is to get them to a point where they can take the CTS exam. And we have partnered each of them up with a HETMA mentor to help guide them through this journey. And then we will take care of the fees associated with taking the CTS exam and also a trip to Infocom so that they can have that experience, and with the hopes that they will, stay in AV, especially higher ed.
Right.
But yeah, and it's been, we know that it's 9 people. It's not a lot. Like, and we're hoping to do this, each year, and that, that little bit could potentially grow more and more so that we will have, more of a diverse population in AV, because, it's starting as a little drip, but hopefully it'll ripple out to make a bigger impact.
Right. So as we start closing down the show and we start winding down, I start asking my favorite question is, for someone who is looking to get into AV, doesn't know where to start, and wants to get involved somehow, what is like the perfect advice you would give them, or at least advice you would have liked to have been given before being in this industry?
I think in the beginning, I would have appreciated having a mentor. So that's one of my biggest pieces of advice to people. If you want to be successful in AV in general, I think it helps to have somebody who can help guide you and point you in the right direction, and maybe even just kind of encourage a little bit and kind of make you not make you do things, but just kind of help you push your boundaries a little bit where you may not have done things, on your own, but it would have, I think I may have, made some different choices in my career or tried advancing sooner, or just, I really appreciate the mentorship that I have now with a couple of different people, and it's, it really has benefited me quite a lot. And that's one of the big benefits of HETMA too, is just meeting like-minded people who will encourage you to kind of do more and be more. But yeah, but education, like, it doesn't have to be formal. Like, I don't, there's no AV, bachelor's degree or anything, but like, take advantage of any and all education opportunities that come across your plate. Like, James King from UNLV, he always says, always be learning. And I couldn't agree more. Like, just all the webinars, all the, manufacturer education and whatnot, it's all good stuff. Take advantage of it.
Well, Erin, thank you so much for being a part of this show. If anyone wants to get involved with HETMA, how can they do so? Yeah,
so if you are in higher ed AV, head to hetma.org and sign up to be a member.
And if anyone wants to get in contact with you, how can they do so?
Yeah, so you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn at Erin Maher-Moran, and I'm also on Twitter, and my handle is at Smearin_off_ice.
Nice. And you can also catch Erin as the host of EDTech here on AVNation. You can catch full episodes here on our website, or you can head over to our YouTube channel. Thank everyone for listening to the AV Profession. You can follow me on Twitter at _Taylor Moore, _Taylor Moore. It's 2 underscores. It's __ Taylor Moore. And then be sure to check out more content like this over on our YouTube channel, and be sure to subscribe. And for more content like this, head over to avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.